Donald Trump facing renewed calls to try to tone down his rhetoric against Democrats in the press tonight, amping up the anti-immigrant messaging as well with the midterms approaching. Well, my next guest is actually a Trump administration official and something of a whistleblower. Roberta Jacobson served as the U.S. ambassador to Mexico for a year under Trump. She's been a diplomat for 3 decades with 5 different administrations. The context on her resignation comes in a new piece where she speaks out in the New York Times about the disorder and chaos of the administration, including eroding trust with key allies like Mexico. She cites Trump's rhetoric on the border wall. He went there last night.
Wait till you see what we're doing with our border over the next few weeks. As you know, we started the wall, but wait till you see what happens over the next couple of weeks. You're going to see a very secure border. The military is ready. They're all set.
Ambassador, did the way the president conducts himself make your job harder as a diplomat?
Oh, infinitely, Ari. I mean, it was much more difficult when you have an issue in which, surprisingly or not, all Mexicans agreed on that issue, no matter what their political stripe, that they were not paying for a wall.
And the rhetoric is not the first time we've had divisive foreign policy messaging. American presidents are criticized a lot throughout the world, but you've served in other administrations. What was different in your view about this one?
Well, I think, what was different was it felt personal. And indeed it was. When the president began a campaign by calling Mexicans rapists and criminals, that obviously hurts. One of your guests earlier tonight talked about words matter. I think it was Congressman Jeffries in the context of the domestic situation in the U.S. Words matter overseas, too. And people may be told the president didn't mean everybody, he didn't mean you, he didn't mean leaders. But the populations of those countries hear that, and they take it to heart, obviously.
The old saying is that politics is supposed to stop at our water's edge. Did you ever see or personally view anything coming from the White House or the Trump administration that seemed to politicize the security or diplomatic work you had to do towards Mexico?
Well, I don't know that I would call it politicizing. Certainly, there were things that, because of the political muscle memory of the president, it made the job harder. Whether it was NAFTA negotiations, which had so many additional American demands that really had never been part of conversations over modernizing NAFTA. And clearly some of those were politically inspired by various interest groups and not necessarily good for the country as a whole. And so, it was very difficult to try and sit down and have the kinds of reasonable conversations that we needed to have, which is not to say that we didn't have them. Obviously, we worked pretty well with Mexico on a lot of issues, but it became so much more difficult for the politicians in Mexico to defend that work. And when you constrain your partners that way, you don't get the best results on issues that are critical to the U.S., like the opioid epidemic and security.
Does it work to tell other countries, oh, just don't take the president literally?
Well, Ari, I was at a conference in Mexico just a couple of days ago, and someone who considers himself a Trump surrogate said just that.
Sure.
Don't listen to what the president says. Just watch what he and the government do. And I'm sorry it doesn't work that way. As I noted, the U.S.'s approval rate has dropped 30%. I noted this in my op-ed, 30% in just a year and a half. That's really hard to tell everybody in these countries, don't listen to what the president says about you, about Mexicans, or about Central Americans or others.
Ambassador Roberta Jacobson, appreciate your service and you telling us a little bit about your decision to leave government service. Thank you so much. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.